A chill wind blows across Europe. From the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea, unexplained fires and acts of sabotage have left authorities baffled and citizens on edge. The targets are seemingly random. An Ikea store in Lithuania, a railway line in Germany, a shopping mall in Poland. Yet the pattern is impossible to ignore. These incidents, many believe, are not isolated or random. They are the work of a hostile foreign power, and all fingers point towards Moscow. The Kremlin, of course, denies any involvement. European security officials see the hand of the Russian state, or at least Russian-backed actors, in the shadows. They point to the sophistication of some of the attacks, the timing, and the Kremlin's history of using such tactics to sow chaos and undermine its adversaries. Europe, it seems, is once again on the front line of a new kind of conflict, a shadow war fought not with tanks and missiles, but with arson, cyber attacks and disinformation. The stakes in this new conflict are high, threatening not just the physical security of Europe, but also its social fabric, democratic institutions and way of life. An Ikea store in Vilnius, Lithuania, was engulfed in a massive fire. The blaze, which started in the furniture department, quickly spread through the building, causing millions of euros in damage. While Lithuanian authorities were quick to launch an investigation, the cause of the fire remained a mystery. No evidence of arson was found, but the timing of the incident, coming just weeks after Lithuania announced its intention to increase military spending in response to Russian aggression in Ukraine, raised eyebrows. Then in February, a German railway line used to transport military equipment to Ukraine was sabotaged. Cables were cut in 2 separate locations, causing widespread disruption to rail traffic. German authorities immediately suspected foul play, and the investigation soon focused on possible Russian involvement. The largest shopping mall in Poland was targeted. A fire which started in the food court during peak hours caused panic and chaos. These incidents, while seemingly unconnected, have fueled growing anxiety across Europe. The question that haunts European security services is not just who is behind these attacks, but why. Some analysts believe that the Kremlin is engaging in a form of psychological warfare, aiming to create a climate of fear and uncertainty in the West. By striking seemingly random targets, they argue, Moscow seeks to erode public trust in governments and institutions and to undermine support for Ukraine. Others believe that the Kremlin has more tangible objectives in mind, such as disrupting Western military support for Ukraine. Still, others believe that the Kremlin is simply testing the West's resolve. Whatever the Kremlin's motives, one thing is clear. The West is facing a new kind of threat, one that is difficult to deter and even harder to defeat. For those who have studied the history of Russian espionage, the recent wave of suspected sabotage in Europe comes as no surprise. The Kremlin has a long and dark history of using covert operations to destabilize its adversaries, dating back to the early days of the Soviet Union. From the assassination of Leon Trotsky in Mexico City in 1940 to the poisoning of Alexander Litvinenko in London in 2006, the Kremlin has shown itself willing to use any means necessary to eliminate its enemies and advance its interests. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union developed a sophisticated apparatus for carrying out covert operations abroad. These tactics, honed over decades of Cold War espionage, have not been forgotten in the halls of the Kremlin. The methods employed by the Kremlin today may be more sophisticated, leveraging the anonymity of cyberspace and the reach of social media, but the goals remain strikingly similar: to sow discord, undermine trust, and weaken the West from within. The recent wave of suspected sabotage in Europe is just the latest manifestation of this strategy. The Kremlin understands that in the 21st century, information is power. It has invested heavily in its propaganda apparatus, pouring resources into state-controlled media outlets like RT and Sputnik, which pump out a steady stream of disinformation and anti-Western propaganda. These outlets, often disguised as legitimate news sources, target audiences in the West, seeking to shape public opinion and undermine trust in democratic institutions. This new age of information warfare has created a climate of uncertainty and distrust, making it increasingly difficult to discern truth from falsehood. While the Kremlin's tactics may have evolved, its reliance on proxies and deniable assets remains a constant. The recent wave of suspected sabotage in Europe bears the hallmarks of this approach, utilizing individuals or groups with no clear ties to the Russian state, making it difficult to establish a direct link to Moscow. These pay-as-you-go saboteurs, motivated by ideology, money, or a combination of both, offer the Kremlin plausible deniability, allowing it to strike at the West without leaving fingerprints. This new breed of saboteur is often recruited online, radicalized through exposure to extremist ideologies and anti-Western propaganda. Their targets are carefully selected for maximum impact, often chosen to sow fear and disrupt critical infrastructure. This new age of shadows presents a significant challenge for Western intelligence agencies who are struggling to adapt to the Kremlin's evolving tactics. The Kremlin's calculus is clear. The potential benefits of these covert operations outweigh the risks. By sowing chaos and undermining the West from within, Moscow hopes to achieve its strategic objectives without triggering a full-blown military conflict. The Kremlin believes, perhaps rightly so, that the West is weak, divided, and distracted by internal problems. They see a West grappling with economic uncertainty, social unrest, and political polarization. This perception of Western weakness emboldens the Kremlin, leading them to believe that they can act with impunity, that they can push the boundaries without facing serious consequences. The Kremlin, however, may be miscalculating. The recent wave of suspected sabotage in Europe, while deeply concerning, has also served as a wake-up call for the West. In Brussels, defense ministers have gathered for emergency meetings, sharing intelligence and coordinating their response. NATO, once focused on territorial defense, is now adapting to the challenges of hybrid warfare, developing new capabilities in cyber defense, strategic communications, and countering disinformation. European nations are also strengthening their domestic security measures, tightening border controls, and increasing surveillance of potential threats. There is a renewed focus on intelligence sharing and cooperation, both within Europe and with transatlantic partners. The key to countering the Kremlin's strategy lies in exposing its tactics and strengthening the resilience of Western societies. This requires investing in education and critical thinking skills, promoting media literacy, and supporting independent journalism. A united, informed, and resilient West is the best defense against the Kremlin's campaign of subversion. The world stands at a crossroads. The rules-based international order, painstakingly built over decades, is under assault from authoritarian powers who seek to rewrite the rules in their favor. The Kremlin's campaign of sabotage in Europe is just one manifestation of this broader trend. The West, for too long complacent, is now awakening to this threat. The challenge ahead is formidable, but the stakes are too high to ignore. The defense of freedom and democracy demands vigilance, resolve, and a willingness to confront those who seek to undermine them. The time for action is now.